Hi, friends. Welcome to my new episode on Weekend Learning with Subs. Today, we will see how you can integrate your data from Fabric to Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. Now, this is gonna be interesting. Fabric, as we all know, is known more for its outbounding capabilities from D365 to its Lakehouse. Maybe you want to export the data to analyze as a Fabric SQL semantic endpoint to view it in a Power BI report. You may need to analyze the data to evaluate some churning and predict some outcome in a periodical regression. Or you may want to export the data to some third party integration application that takes out the data from Lakehouse. But you know what? Inbound is not at all a common phenomenon in Fabric in context to Dynamics 365 F&O.
And yes, in this episode, we would see how can you bring the data, how can you inbound your data from Fabric to finance and operations. Requesting you to watch the video till the end, and please like and subscribe to my channel just in case if you have not already done so. In our example, we are going to load data from Microsoft Fabric into customer groups. So customer groups, we already have some data in our system. We are going to import some additional data, and we are going to make use of Fabric to do so. So let us see the data, what the data is. So I'm going to take you to the Fabric into my lake house, and I have this file called customer group entity. And if I click on this, it's going to show you the data inside. So I've already got this loaded. So I have this data customer group, the description, terms of payment, default tax group, and price included tax. So these are the standard columns that are present in the customer group data entity. Apart from that, I also have included one more column called MSERP. Let me expand this a little bit and let me take you here. The column name is MSERP, then underscore customer group entity ID. So if you ask me what is this is nothing but whenever you are going to make use of a table, you are going to create a table, you are going to use a Dataverse table. By default, any ERP table, whenever you're going to use them from MS ERP, Dynamics ERP into Dataverse, the system by default adds one GUID column, which is nothing but the name of the table that you are using. In our case, we are going to make use of Dataverse. Dataverses are an awesome way to tap in the virtual entity records, the virtual entity data from Dynamics ERP into straight into Dataverse. And from Dataverse, you can leverage them from and to Fabric. So Fabric, you can export data into Dataverse, then into virtual entities and into F&O. And likewise, you can also export the data from F&O through virtual entities into Dataverse and consequently into the Fabric. So in our case, we are going to inbound the data by making use of virtual entities. The moment you are going to expose your table, as we will see, the moment you are going to expose your table as a virtual entity table and use that into Dataverse, automatically this column is going to be included and you have to provide the data when you are going to import the data into F&O. Otherwise, it will fail. It works as a primary key. Now, let me show you how can you set up a virtual entity for this customer group data entity. I will show you how to do that. So we will go back to our Power Portal Admin Center, straight to our environmental URL. So if I click on this, it will open up, and let's wait for this data to get loaded. Let's straight go to Power Platform environmental settings and let this page be loaded. And so we can make various kinds of environmental settings. Environmental, we can set up settings of our choice, and we will scroll all the way down to the administration. So inside the administration, we go to virtual entity data sources. where we are going to select Dynamics 365 Finance and Operation as our data source. So let's quickly find out Finance and Operations. So we have Finance and Operations out here, right here in Finance and Operations. If we click here, so by default, this page is going to get loaded where you can show like, so this is my target URL. This URL is nothing but your Finance and Operations by default URL, which we are going to get. OAuth authentication URL, don't change this. Please keep this as is. Tenant ID you can get from your infra ID of your Azure. Application ID is also nothing but your client ID, which is also what you can get from your app registration of your infra ID. Azure Active Directory application secret is also what you can get from your infra ID application registration. And AAT resource, just leave it like this. This is what this is. If you ask me, this is nothing but the microservice that is responsible for virtual entities for finance and operations. And for API managed solution name, also leave this just as is. And API managed prefix is MSERP, which means like whenever you are going to create any table, you are going to expose any virtual entity from finance and operations to reflect into Dataverse. This table is going to be prefixed with a name called MSERP underscore, and then the name of your table that you are of the name of the entity that you are exposing. Okay, so let's save and close this and go back to our Power Platform pages. And so if I click on right here, if I click on this settings and all, right beside that you find the filter icon. So if I click on this filter icon, and if I it's going to select a table to search, so I'm selecting switch to classic. So this is what is going to take you some time to get this loaded. Just wait for some time to get the page loaded, whereby you can select and expose your virtual entity to be applicable to your Dataverse. As this page gets loaded, so we can see there is a drop down called lookup for available finance and operation entities. So just in case if this is not selected by default, you can select this available finance and operation entities, and then you can select by name, and then equals, or instead of that you can select contains, and you can select the text. You can fill in the text of your choice. So in our case, let's fill something like this: customer group, and let's click on results. Let's see what happens. It's searching and it's going to give me back the list of matching tables that has this kind of name, customer groups. Just in case if you're not able to find that, the table of your choice, you might need to change the selection criteria, the filtration criteria. And let's wait. Okay, it says like there are no available finance and operation entities to show. So we can again go back and we can again find something like customer. Okay, so the name is customer, like that. If I select, and let's click on results. Yeah, so the all the customer groups are customer v3 entities, customer group entities. So all these customer related entities are named like this in finance and operations. Let's filter like that and let's wait. It's going to take a while. All right. Yeah, so it came customer v2 entity, customer v3 entity, customer base entity, and customer group entity is also here. So if I click on this customer group entity, let's see what happens. So inside this, there are a few settings that you might need to turn on in order to make this customer group be available as a virtual entity in your Dataverse. So here is the visible key that you have to turn on. There is also a refresh key also that you need to turn on. So if you have turned them on, then you need to save and close, and automatically it's going to take several moments to get your database synced. Don't be frustrated. Like, I understand it's going to take a huge amount of time, but at the end, it's going to be added as a virtual entity to your Dataverse. So I am not doing operation again because this already I have exposed as a virtual entity. So if I come back to my data source in my dataverse in my Power Apps, make.powerapps.com, this is what the customer groups is already there. And you can see like there are so many records already it has published, it has pushed, and this data is already available. So what I will do is that I will now go back to my Fabric and try to push this data, this new set of data into my dataverse. But we are going to create a data pipeline now. So let's click on copy data assistant, and this is going to let me choose data source. So in our case, the data source is the Lakehouse files. So I'm in the Lakehouse, which is config data uh, underscore dynamics 365 A4. We are going to select that, and we are also going to choose the files as this radio button. This option we are going to choose, and this is the file we are interested in. So here are the details of the files it's going to show me. So I'm going to select the sheet name as customer groups. And if I go down, it's going to load up the data files, the files records that actually it has been able to collect. And I'm also select the first row as header. So which is going to make it understand like the first row is essentially a, not a table row, it's actually a header. And then I'm going to select the next. So after which it's going to let me choose the destination. This is the most critical part of the entire exercise. So we are going to select here Dataverse, but wait, we can also go for REST APIs. So REST APIs could also be used here to export the data from Fabric to finance and operations. But as you can understand, REST API does need some kind of a bearer token arrangement. So you have to refresh your bearer token again and again, and obviously you understand like if your data chunk is pretty heavy, so it's going to time out and you need to again ask for a new bearer token, and obviously it's not a good solution in all such cases. So REST APIs are more apt for, you know, low volume data chunks or, you know, synchronous data movements, all these things. But for large data exchanges we can go for something else. So there is Dataverse which is available. We can choose this Dataverse as I was explaining. Like our Dataverse is a readily available table we can make use of by exposing a virtual entity as a Dataverse table. So this environment domain, we can directly grab this environment domain from here. We can just going to copy this link address and go back to my pipeline, and I'm going to paste this. But yes, to remember to remove this HTTPS. So REST all it's going to take up on its own, and this is an organizational authentication kind like organizational account I'm choosing. Alternatively, I can also make use of service principal and workspace identity. So for our example, we are going to choose organizational account, whereby I can use an impersonal email ID to do this kind of data migration activity, or else I can also make use of a service principal key to make the data migration. So let's hit next and let's wait what happens. So it is connecting to the data source, and it's going to fetch the table which is available as a part of your exposed, your connected dataverse URL. So let's wait till this operation gets over. And yes, like this is going to load up the entity list here. So in our case, we are going to select customer group data entity. Let's choose this, and it's going to give you a list of column mappings. So which are, not certainly not always correct. You can remove all of them and start creating the column mappings from the scratch. So you see all these column mappings are wrong and it has misplaced column mappings. So you do what? You select all of them and you can delete them so that you can import everything from the scratch. So what I do is that I always import schemas, and it's going to take a couple of moments to get the schema from my files that I actually am using from my Fabric and get them brought down to here so that I can get column by column mapping over here. So I'm selecting the mapping. So for example, it start with the customer group. So in our case, the customer group is mapped to the accounting currency. So let's select for the customer group entity ID, and let's go for this one. So this is our customer group ID. I'm going to choose this one. Let's go to new mapping and let's select, say for example, the next one, which is the description, I suppose, or the description is the next one. And let's find out the description column out here. So here is my description column, and let's go for the new mapping again, and let's choose terms of payment, and let's select from here the terms of payment once again. So where is my terms of payment? Payment terms ID. I'm choosing this one. And again, a new mapping as you know, default tax group. So let's choose the default tax group. Is it's present? I'm sure that's default dimension is this. Default is public sector, and default tax group is tax group ID. And let's once again click on new mapping. Like this, we can keep on adding new columns, and let's select the is inclusive of tax, so it's a boolean field. So we can skip this because this is might not be very much relevant in our case. So let's skip this and let's select instead the customer entity ID, and let's map this with the entity ID, which is obviously a primary key, and we have to map this, otherwise it's, as you can understand, it's going to throw out some kind of an error saying that this is required. So let's select this customer group entity ID, and we can conclude this mapping out here and click on next. So this is kind of giving a snapshot of your mapping Excel to Dataverse, and it's asking like, do you want this execution to be started immediately? You can select this, or you can simply save plus run. So this, as a result, this pipeline is going to show you like this. You have to wait for some time to get the pipeline, save your changes, and you can start monitoring this. You can click on this and you can see from here, you can see from from here the running, it's showing us running. We can click or we can wait till this run gets over. We can also see from the monitoring tab, and we can find out from the run history what has happened. So if I go to the monitor, it's saying that, let's go to the monitor first and let's see what is happening. So it's see like saying that not started as yet, and let's wait till the execution gets over. It's saying as run is in progress, and let's wait. And after a while, if we come back to our finance and operations cust group form, and if we refresh this form and we go all the way down, we'll see all this are created from Fabric. The all the 5 customer groups that we checked in our files that got created. So that was it. Basically, you can make use of Fabric to just from financial operations into Fabric, but also you can make Fabric to import the data to work as an inbounding utility to import the data into financial operations. Well, that's the one half of the story. The next half that obviously comes to mind is the question, like, how can you make this file system interaction be a little dynamic? The files that I showed you is just an already uploaded set of records. What if I want to connect it to something more rhythmic, more dynamic, more oscillatory? Say, for example, I get this connected to a SharePoint folder, and every time a file is getting added to it, how can I make this files record be read and be loaded into the files of my Fabric? From there, we can make this arrangement to make the Fabric be talking to F&O. But to do that, unfortunately, in Fabric, we don't have such a triggering system whereby it can understand any new file that has been created, updated, or modified. So we cannot do anything like that directly. So there is luckily another cool hack to do so. So you need to wait till the time I release my next episode on a more dynamic interaction of SharePoint with Microsoft Fabric with Dynamics 365, and would like to request you to try the inter exercise once from your end and let me know how it goes. Much love, Subhashish.